You're about to watch a clip from Good Talk Minot, an awesome weekly show from the Good Talk Network. Find us on facebook.com/Good Talk Minot and catch the live show every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. and 1 p.m. Central Time. Hit like, subscribe, and the notification button. That way you're notified when our new videos are published to YouTube. Cheers and enjoy the show.
Your assimilation into the Good Talk Network begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Confirmation bias. It plagues folks everywhere. I'd be curious to know about your
confirmation bias, Joni. Do you mean that you listen to what confirms what you believe already?
Of course.
So if you're, let's say, a devout conservative Republican, you really don't listen to MSNBC. You listen to Fox.
Absolutely.
Or the other side, right, where you realign the world to sort of show you what you want to be.
I think
true
that's
in
inherent.
Yeah,
Josh. I think that's inherent to belief systems.
Yeah.
You know, I found the people who least are interested in hearing about an interest in belief systems are those who really believe something.
Sure.
So it's
kind of challenging in some respects.
Sorry, but yeah. but yeah, everything I've done in archaeology is part and parcel of this quest of taking these sets of ideas, these expectations, and then getting what I think is more real about the site. Everything I've done is a subset of that larger quest.
How has the scientific method played a role in your archaeological discoveries and in the larger picture of archaeology? Because I think that's how we escape the confirmation bias and maybe some of these alternative theories is through.
Well, the confirmation bias is a very big interest to me because I'm very concerned about critical thinking, and I'm very keen to promote anything that promotes critical thinking. But in terms of the scientific method, you know, my breakout project was to map the Great Sphinx stone by stone. So I did that between 1979 and 1983. Like the Lilliputian on Gulliver, I was, crawling all over and mapping every stone to scale. The Sphinx became kind of a key for me that led to a wider understanding of the Giza Plateau. And so we did the Giza Plateau Mapping Project to provide survey control so that we would know where we are anywhere on the plateau down to a centimeter, with a grid and grid coordinates and everything. But there came a time when I realized I had to turn my back to the pyramids in order to understand them. Because if it took tens of thousands of people to build these pyramids, and this is what my colleagues, the traditional academic Egyptologists, were saying, 20 or 30,000 people, this is what they were saying, that's a city the size of Minot. Now Minot, in the 3rd millennium BC, 4,500 years ago, would have been one of the super cities. Because guess what? There was a time, according to worldwide archaeology, when there weren't cities. And this was the time when the first cities were appearing.
Starting to emerge.
That's right. In Iraq, in the Indus Valley, in North Syria, and probably in China, although we need to know more about China. But I said, well, where were these 20 or 30,000 people living? How were they housed? How were they fed? What if we could find part of that city? What would it tell us about how they organized themselves? So the last 30 years I've been doing nothing but when we excavate, as we say in the field schools that we've developed to train young Egyptian archaeologists, we are not looking for things. We are looking for information. So we save every scrap of animal bone, for example.
Save the conclusion until the very end, or leave the conclusion open.
Well, the scientific method, that's what Jonah was asking about.
Yep.
What do we do with this animal bone? Let me just give that example. So we have a guy, Richard Redding, who's done his whole career doing zoo archaeology, studying animal bone. He can tell, is it sheep, cattle, goat? Is it pig? He can do microfauna. Is it bird? What kind of fish? If he's got the right bone in the right part, he can age it and sex it. So, for example, one of the findings, we have now uncovered a lost city over the area of 7 football fields. And over that whole area, he's finding a huge consumption of cattle. People were eating prime beef. When he can age and sex the cattle bone, it tends to be under 18 months, and it tends to be male. So you start to get this picture where they're culling their herds, but they're not taking the females.
Yep.
And they're feeding this workforce high protein value food. Okay, let's pull back now. We're not finding any lasers. We're not finding any deeper settlement underneath. We're going down to geological levels. This is the human remains, the human cultural material that we find. But that's an example of the scientific method. We hypothesized there was this city out there because it's the logical place for it, given the shape of the landscape and the plateau. We went out, tested the hypothesis. My God, there's a whole 7 football fields and even more. Much of it's under the modern town. But then the scientific method comes into play where you save every scrap of evidence and then you try to understand what kind of life they were living in this city.